Twilight and the Forbidden City by Sir Reginald Fleming Johnston. To His Majesty the Emperor Puyi, in memory of a happy relationship begun 15 years ago in the Forbidden City, and in the earnest hope that after the passing of the twilight and the long night, the dawn of a new and happier day for himself and also his people on both sides of the Great Wall is now breaking. This book is dedicated by his faithful and affectionate servant and tutor, Reginald F. Johnston. Preface by His Majesty the Emperor. In the 10th month of the Chaozu year, after leaving the residence of Prince Chun, I took refuge in the Japanese legation. It was Johnston, my tutor, who was chiefly instrumental in rescuing me from my peril. Moreover, it was who first interviewed the Japanese minister Feng Zi on my behalf, after which Feng Zi received me courteously and allowed me to use his legation as a place for refuge from wild soldiery. In the 2nd month of each Chao year, I made another move and went to reside in Tianjin. That was 7 years ago. And Johnston, from first to last, both in Peking and subsequently in Tianjin, was my companion throughout a period of 13 years. Moreover, it was who first interviewed the minister Feng Zi on my behalf, after which Feng Zi received me most courteously and allowed me to use his legation as a place of refuge from the wild soldiery. In the 2nd month of each Chao year, I made another move and went to reside in Tianjin. That was 7 years ago. And Johnston, from the first to the last, both in Peking and subsequently in Tianjin, was my companion throughout a period of 13 years. No one has a more intimate knowledge than he of the disasters and hardships of that critical period. He is therefore well fitted to take up his pen and make a record of events in which he himself played a part. To those who look back upon the sorrows and disorders of that time, this is a true record of his, based on personal experience and observation, will indeed be a thing of value. As a writer and as a man, Johnston is one who is not surpassed by even the best of our native scholars. When his book appears, I'll know it will be highly prized by the world. 9th month of the Hinsin Wei year. Introduction. At about 11 o'clock on the morning of July 25th, 1901, there stepped ashore at Hong Kong a shy and boyish figure, attired in the rich silk costume of a Chinese noble, and wearing on his hat the red button of a mandarin of the highest rank. At the pier, he and his little suite were met by a group of British officials, of whom the writer of these pages was one, who welcomed him on behalf of the local government. Accompanied by an escort of police, whose business it was to keep at a respectful distance the throng of inquisitive but undemonstrative Chinese who lined the streets, 4 red-coated chair-bearers bore him swiftly away from the waterfront. 15 minutes later, his chair was set down at the front of a doorway of a government house, where he was received and greeted by the governor of the Crown Colony. The distinguished visitor was His Imperial Highness Prince Chun, brother of the reigning Emperor of China. His host was His Excellency Sir Henry Blake, representative in Hong Kong of His Majesty King Edward VII. The occasion was a memorable one, yet his visit was shorn of the most ceremonial courtesies that would have been extended to him by the British authorities, had he been willing to accept them. No salute from British men of war or from the shore batteries greeted him as he entered the harbor in the German ship Bayern. No guard of honor received him at his landing. This was in accordance of his own wish, for he was traveling on a mission of humiliation, and while it remained unfulfilled, he preferred to receive none of the honors due to a prince of the royal blood of China. 1 year and 35 days before Prince Chun set foot in Hong Kong, the German plenipotentiary in China had been murdered by a boxer in the streets of Peking. The shot that killed Baron von Kettler on June 20th, 1900, reverberated around the world, for it marked the beginning of a lamentable episode of history known as the Siege of the Legations. And now, in accordance with one of those conditions of peace imposed by the victorious allies on the base Chinese court, a Manchu imperial prince was on his way to Germany to lay the humble regrets and apologies of the Son of Heaven before the throne of one who in Chinese eyes had lately been at best a tributary prince, and at worst a contumelious barbarian kinglet. Among some notes which I made at the time, and which were afterwards embodied in a document now in Downing Street, were the following words: "Though Prince Chun cannot, according to the dynastic customs of China, himself become a candidate for the imperial throne. It is not impossible that if he has any children, his son may eventually become emperor. This would certainly make Prince Chun himself a very important factor in the future politics of China. This remark correctly foreshadowed what fortune had in store for Prince Chun. After his return from Germany, the Empress Dowager married him to a daughter of her trusted friend, the Kingsman Zheng Lu, Viceroy and Grand Counselor. Early in 1906, their first son was born, and that son, whose personal name was Pu Yi, became the last sovereign of the Ta Qing Manchu dynasty in China, while Prince Chun himself, as regent for his own son, became for a few disturbed anxious years ruler of the Chinese Empire. Not long after Prince Chun had come and gone, another member of the reigning house passed through Hong Kong, on a mission that involved no degradation for China. In his case, therefore, there was no abatement of royal honors. This was Prince Tai Chien, afterwards in suggestion to his father, Prince Qing, who was on his way to England to represent the sovereign at King Edward's coronation. It was these two occasions that I first came in contact with members of the Manchu imperial family, whom, long afterwards, I was to know more intimately than any other foreigner. But I had already made the acquaintance of a man whose fortunes were also linked to those of the Manchu dynasty, and who will deservedly occupy a far more honorable place in the annals of history than either of the princes I have named. I first arrived in Hong Kong as an Eastern cadet, fresh from Magdalen on Christmas Day, 1898. Epoch-marking events had been taking place in China during that year, and the leading figure in those events, who had recently arrived in Hong Kong as a refugee. It was in the government house that I first met Kang Yue, the most admired and the most hated member of the Chinese race at that time. Admired, even reverenced by those who combined the loyalty of the dynasty with a patriotic longing to see their country honored among the nations. Hated, and also feared, by those who believed that China had nothing to learn from those Western barbarians, and the Chinese emperor was de jure king of kings. When I first met this great reformer and modern sage, he was in mourning for those 6 martyrs who, less fortunate than himself, had fallen victims to the rage and hate of the Empress Dowager and her minions and deceivers. One of the 6 was his brother, Kang Kuang Jen, for his own capture alive or dead. Very large rewards had been offered not only by the central government at Peking, but also by provincial authorities in Hong Kong. Though carefully guarded by the British government, he was in constant danger of assassination. It was under the protection of the police escort that he called upon Lord Charles Beresford, then a visitor to the Far East. He had an interesting conversation with him, which is recorded in Lord Charles's account of his travels and impressions. After a short sojourn in Hong Kong, Kang Yue went to Japan, Canada, United States, and Europe, always with a price on his head, always in danger of his life from watchful spies and agents of the imperial government. As long as the old Empress Dowager lived, he was an homeless wanderer, and indeed, even after his return to his own country, a wanderer he remained to the end of his life. My main purpose in writing this book has been to give some account of what I have called the twilight period of the Manchu occupation of the Forbidden City. The 13 years that have elapsed between the establishment of the Republic beginning in 1912 and the expulsion of the Emperor Pu Yi from the Imperial Palace by the Christian general and his associates in November 1924. But to make a story clear to those who are not familiar with recent political history of China, I have found it necessary to say something about the sunlight that preceded the twilight. A sunlight already obscured by thunderclouds, and also the tempestuous night by which the twilight was followed. There is a twilight of the dawn as well as a twilight of the evening, and it may be that the night which swallowed up by the twilight described in these pages will be followed in due time by another twilight, which will brighten into a new radiant day of sunshine. That is what all those who admire and respect the Chinese people, and who, knowing them, does not adherently hope or steadfastly believe. Many of us are convinced that we can already detect the first glimmer of a new dawn in the very quarter of the heavens which others seems the blackest. It was only the evening twilight, however, not the morning twilight, which we shall be directly concerned in the following chapters. My story, therefore, will be confined to the 34 years that began in 1898, with the noble but hopeless attempt of the unhappy Emperor Guangzhou to carry out the comprehensive program of reform laid before him by Kang Yue, and ended with the return of the last Manchu emperors of China to the land of his forefathers. At the end of 1931, with the emergence of Manchuria in the following year as one of the storm centers of world politics,